Okay, so thank you all to joining us here for this November edition of the Link Tech Talks. And today we have with us Luis Marti, who is the scientific director of INRIA Chile, which is a French research institute for digital sciences. Luis, his research focuses especially on artificial intelligence, in particular machine learning, neural networks, optimization, and hybrid systems. And one of their projects is also connected to LSST and among other projects that he will tell us today. So Luis, please take it away.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you even more for the invitation. I personally am really thrilled to share with you part of the work we are doing here that INRIA is doing here in Chile. So let me start by sharing my screen and going to the first slide. So when I think it was last summer for you, winter for us, that we visited the Seattle area for a conference and had the opportunity to visit the eScience Institute at UW and meet with Andy. And we shared some of the activities we were doing in Chile and all of that. So it came up this idea of, as a first step, that we have this presentation by me and Nayat Sanchez P, that is the director, the director of INRIA Chile. She's in the meeting, so all the questions for her. So that the idea was that we share with you some of the work we are doing, that INRIA is doing in Chile, and take it from there to see what other activities we can do in the future and all of that. So in that spirit, as a lot of the work we are doing has to do with AI and climate change, let's say for this presentation, after discussing a little bit with Nayat, we decided to give a focus on this topic, but also there are a lot of shared challenges between what the work we are doing in this domain and other domains, particularly related to astronomy. We will do like a parallel presentation, how connecting the two worlds that in principle are like really apart, from understanding plankton to understanding stars. No, it's a slightly different change of dimension. But for machine learning, there are a lot of underlying similar problems that we are addressing. So as maybe not all of you are aware of what INRIA is, INRIA is the French National Institute for Research in Digital Sciences. So we are the French center that works in computer science and applied mathematics. If you ask me what INRIA does, it's like all computer science. And, the key topics, of course, now, as many other people in computer science, there is a strong focus on AI and machine learning, but not only that. Just to give you an idea, INRIA is the coordinator of the French program for quantum computing. There are a lot of groups, and this is really interesting because I always say that it is like a Noah's Ark. You can always find two guys in INRIA that does something in any topic that you pick. There are two. And two research group probably that does that, even the most strange thing. So I don't know, I can tell you a lot more of the institute. It has like a 50 years old, more than 50 years old, and has also this spirit of not only doing research, but also going the extra mile and applying research to practice. And I can quote or cite many events or many results that we have had that have had a lot of impact for everybody. Just to give you an idea, in every TCP/IP package that travels on the internet, there is an invention, the packet switching protocol. In the 90s, we were in the center of the web, and every web page has a CSS file, and this was an invention in the 90s. I don't know, we have an Emmy Award for the crowds of Game of Thrones. So when I say we do a lot of things, it's literally a lot of things. So, And this is important because I have a bias. I work about AI and machine learning, but we don't not only do that. No. Then INRIA is, as I was telling, the French Institute. There are 10 campuses spread in different places of France. The campuses have not a topic assigned, so there are just people from different. It's just a geographical thing. It's not a center for AI or a center for this. It's just different campuses, and there is only one center abroad France. That is this center that INRIA has in Chile. And to give you an idea, in total, we are like 4,000 something researchers. You know, the numbers change and all of that. So INRIA has been in Chile for 11 years now. We had our 10-year anniversary last year, and this is our building here in Las Condes, near, the metropolitan area of Santiago. And we have a floor here of this very good building with very nice views. So getting more into what we are doing in Chile, no, there is a strong focus, in part bias, because right now there is a high demand for this topic of AI and machine learning and related connected areas. But we don't only do that, no. And by the way, our connection with LSST actually comes from outside these topics, no. But just to share with you, more or less, we have an important focus on how to automate machine learning, and this comes from two directions. From I have an optimization in background, so I am really interested in automatic machine learning and AutoML and all these kind of things. And then also, because of the kind of problems that we are addressing, we are interested in anomaly detection in different forms of anomaly detection. So therefore, it's representation learning, but also we have a lot of problems related to computer vision. And there is an important interest, for example, from NIAD in the area of causality and explainability to make a safe use of AI, and connected to that on the specification. And also we have many projects with industry that have to do with time series and predictive maintenance and all of that. And more recently, actually before I came to Chile, there was a lot of work related to modeling and simulation, and now we are combining this with machine learning in this thing that is called physics-informed machine learning. And so, of course, we need to gather data, so we have some work on in the Internet of Things, also problems related to optimization. Guess what? Large language models, surprise, no? Everybody is doing some work on that. So we have some work in the areas of understanding, of applying LLMs in these languages that has very small representation in South America, in particular in Chile, the Mapuche language, the Mapudungun, that we are trying to make a translator and this kind of thing. So it's a very interesting area. So, but more or less in this area we are moving, and keeping connected with what we do and the way we work in Chile and in general and in Chile. We have a set of projects or application domains. One important one has to do with the ocean and climate change. I'm going to be presenting some of these projects. Then we have some other projects that is of the safe use of AI and how we can improve society and help society by using AI. Many projects with industry. Actually, I just brought some here, but there is a lot of work on smart agriculture, on safety, mining, and all of that. This is not so, flashy, but very important. And then in the area of astrocomputing, we have had, and actually we are finishing a very important project connected with you guys. But before, actually, we worked with the ALMA Observatory, and we are currently developing more projects with ESO, the European Southern Observatory, and we are also working in astrophysics. So essentially, there are two ways of describing our work, and I will try to, one way is to talk about the basic computer science research that we do, or to describe the applications. I will try to do both at the same time. That is more complicated, but that is why instead of presenting all the work, we decided to focus on first climate change, because it's a big area that we are working, and then also an area that connects with you, that is this astrocomputing. And so as we were discussing earlier, we actually have a long-term relationship with the area of astronomy and astrophysics before, and actually one of the reasons that INRIA has a center in Chile is that there was a very intense collaboration between INRIA and the ALMA observatory. We, in particular, made the operation dashboard and the alarm monitoring system for ALMA, the Atacama large millimeter, I forgot the what it's for, sorry. And then with LSST, we are about to finish in maybe in 1 month. I don't know the exact date. We are making the operators visualization environment. It's like, the user interface of the telescope. So every time an astronomer operates a telescope, can use this interface, and this is NIAD in the visit we made to the observatory some months ago, and this is how it is currently in these big screens in the background. You see the system we are making. So we are providing a, let's say, easier to use interface to operate the telescope. And this is a good example because this is not machine learning or AI. There is a lot of human-computer interaction research being applied here, and it would be actually really interesting to keep doing this, because it's one of the reasons that, as I was saying, that INRIA is here in Chile is to articulate this collaboration between researchers in France, the observatories in Chile, and all of that. Then going back to climate change, and this is a very interesting topic because AI and climate change, and climate in general, they are tightly coupled. No, first of all, this is, to me, it's pretty obvious. No, that climate. So if you want to make anything optimal and have a minimum footprint on nature, you probably need to use AI in some of the forms, because you need to optimize some process. You need to operate the stuff in an autonomous way, a process that would be naturally not so robust or not so efficient. You need to operate it in a most efficient way. And so there are a lot of work, and we have been working. If you have questions, I can go back to it, but on this area of how to apply AI to make a sustainable living, no? Then AI is essential to understanding climate change itself. And third, it turns out that AI can also become, and has the potential of becoming, a substantial contributor of CO2, then becoming a climate problem. No, this is we have been working in all these verticals. No, for example, in the case of the emissions, we have this project GreenAI that is trying to have a working methodology for AI that minimizes this footprint. This footprint has many. We can talk about it later if you have questions. We have many ways of how to do this. But today I'm going to be focusing on understanding climate change itself in the context of a project that we have on this topic that is called Project OcéanIA. It's in French. It's combining ocean and AI, and sounds like Oceania, that is, this continent in the Pacific. So this is a relatively big project. INRIA has different ways of financing or organizing projects, and this is a larger way. It's just to put it in money, it's like 1.5 million, 5-year, 30 people project, just to give you more or less a ballpark. And essentially, we are trying to apply AI and related topics, for example, modeling, of course, to understand climate change. And the thing here is that actually, when you visit the problems that we face when doing or addressing challenges in astrocomputing. And when we go and try to understand the ocean and climate change, actually, there are a lot of similarities, no? First, if we want to go in an scalable way in both domains, you need to distinguish what is interesting for you, no? So just to put it, I'm sorry, I'm going to be more, to put it in machine learning way, there is no way you can go in a supervised learning way in any of the two domains. So because astronomers are scarce, biologists are scarce, if you want to make a big data set of any of the two domains, this is unviable. No? This is not the data set of bicycle, horse, and cars that you can ask a lot of volunteers to help you. You need people that know. So you need, then it becomes a more interesting machine learning problem because we need to apply more sophisticated approaches on how to squeeze all the use out of the data without requiring human intervention or minimizing the human intervention. And here it's important for you, this is obvious, but I wanted to make it clear. There are two clear different scenarios. One is the operation of astronomical facilities, no? That you have, the telescope is like a factory that has a lot of machinery and you need to operate it in an efficient way. It becomes, let's say, a machine learning problem combined with, for example, with human-computer interaction, of course, but there is a lot of problems related to predictive maintenance, sensor fusion, and flexible logistics that you can do. And then there is a problem of understanding the observations. No? By the way, the Vera-Rubin Observatory and LSST combines the two at the same time because as you are observing all the time, you need to detect interesting stuff as they happen. So it's very nice to see the two worlds coming together because of the nature of the telescope. So, and then in the area of climate change, we have some similar problems combined with another additional challenges. No, one of the is a very complex problem because it depends on has a lot of it's a very, let's say, a system with a lot of subsystems, no? And the main problem is how, in our case, in our project, is how to ensure that the ocean keeps protecting us and keeps mitigating the effects of climate change. The ocean is the main climate change regulator or mitigator for two reasons. First, physically, it's a lot of water, so it takes a lot of effort to change the temperature of water, and then it's also the main source of capture of CO2. But when you go to and see this problem from a machine learning point of view, it's actually a big data, small data problem at the same time. So, for example, you have oceanographic expeditions, and I will show you this later on. They stop a lot of time, they generate a lot of data, but actually, when you see this from a machine learning point of view, they stop in 30 points in the Atlantic Ocean. So it's actually not a lot of data. You don't did a mesh, so it's very hard to get meaningful conclusions. And then you have this problem of the dynamicity of the problem. So in both domains, you have this situation of the characteristics of data. You need to go for a non-regular ML approach to make it scalable, to make use of all the data. And in both cases, you have the situation that you do not only want better models. No, if I go and see a biologist and say, look, my F1 score of detecting plankton is this, and he wants to understand why these two plankton species are different. They need research tools, not just models that solve one task. Solving one task is part of the problem. So I already commented this, and I will try to go faster, but OcéanIA essentially tries to break this vicious cycle of climate change affecting the capacity of the ocean of protecting us against climate change, and have like three progressively more complex questions: how the ocean mitigates climate change. Biologists more or less understand this, but we are trying to put like facts, let's say more solid facts behind it. Then how the ocean is going to change. For example, if we increase the temperature of water 1 degree, how the ocean currents and the populations will move to places and all of that, and what we can do to protect this. And this is very important because we hope at the end of the project to have meaningful actions. Not, we cannot either just say, okay, let's use the ocean and destroy everything, or just not swim in the beach anymore because fish need to live there. We need to find a compromise solution that actually works for humans and animals and the planet. No? So just to get into more situation, for example, one problem is the problem of classifying plankton images. No, we have worked and we are working with French foundations called Tara Ocean, that they have these oceanographic expeditions on a sailboat that travels. And this is, for example, the figure here is the last trip of Tara from Lorient in France to Punta Arenas in the south of Chile. And this is what I am telling you about. They stop different moments and sample. When they sample, they gather a lot of data because they get images of plankton at 3 different depths, and also they at these different depths they also get samples of water, and they sequence the DNA of these samples, separating them by different sizes. Just to give you an idea, they can filter viruses and only sample viruses and all of that. It's a long conversation, but addressing the image problem is very interesting for them because sampling DNA is really complex. And what happens is that they have a lot of images, and actually I was checking, they have right now 320 million images of plankton that they have gathered. For example, this is Ecotaxa, this is a repository of these images. But actually, if you see, a relatively small proportion of these images are labeled, because even though Ecotaxa is a tool that to help people label this is a very complex problem. And then, by the way, the fact that something is not living, this is a sample of the images that Ecotaxa is hosting. You see that all of them say detritus. Actually, this is very important because detritus at this level is how carbon is being sequestered by the ocean. So dead things slowly flow to the bottom of the ocean and become rock. And this is one of the ways of sequestering carbon. So actually measuring the amount of detritus in the ocean is one of the ways of knowing how much CO2 you are gathering. So if we want to understand these plankton species and be able to identify them, the first step is, of course, we have some supervised learning data. So let's go supervised. No? And these are 2 examples of 2 data sets we have worked on. And I don't know if you can see, but the scales are logarithmic. So they are like heavily unbalanced, from some classes that have a few hundred or less than 100 to some classes that have, I don't know, 500,000 images. No, so the most popular ones, of course, are detritus or bat or stuff like that. So this is slowly becoming, even in the supervised case, a challenging machine learning problem. So just to show you, this is we are in the process of publishing these results. We have trained the state-of-the-art transformers, explored the different ways of doing data augmentation, resampling, different loss functions, and all of that. And this is some of the results we have. We are more or less good at classifying plankton. And when I say more or less good, it's actually we are the state of the art. By the way, there are not many people doing this, so it's relatively easy to be in the state of the art. But it only takes a lot of effort because you need to train all these models. And the other thing we did, prepare a tool for showing, as I was saying, how these results, how this classification is being done. So, for example, in the case of this little animal here, we can see how the network in the different layers focus in different parts of the animal, and in other focus on the other different parts. For example, in the outermost part, the exception focus on the little legs, etc. So this is very important because you know that there is a lot of questioning around ML if you are not being biased by some feature or some characteristic that is latent in the images. There is a famous example of, I forgot exactly who did this, but it was a big company, I think, that they train a cancer classifier. So you see a photo of a tumor would classify if it is a malignant tumor or not. And what turns out that is that the classifier was a very good rule classifier, because in every malignant tumor, doctors will put a ruler in the photo to measure the size of the tumor. So what the network learned is that if there was a ruler in the photo, that was a bad tumor. No. So here we are seeing that in some cases, for example, this network looked at stuff that is not relevant, but in this case, you can have like a visual guarantee that is actually looking at the important stuff, not looking at some. For example, there was a little probably like a bubble or something in the photo. This was not taken into account. So it's a meaningful thing. Then the other approach that we follow here is say, okay, we are addressing this as a plain classification problem, but there is actually a hierarchy. You know, we have living, non-living, prokaryote, eukaryote, and all of that you learn in school. So we say, okay, let's try to exploit this information, and instead of having one big classifier, go by levels. So again, we address this with the state of the art and propose our own approach, because at this point, you know, it's very hard to not try to propose something new. And we have some interesting results. So we did this at the 3 levels of the tree, and you can see that, for example, our approach actually was not the best. So just to be sincere, it's not always the best solution, but the good thing is that we beat the best, let's say, non-hierarchical classifier in almost all cases. No, besides the attempt we did, the other approaches work really well. So this is very meaningful, because now we are not only able to classify something, but also provide, let's say, follow the different classification paths that we were addressing here. And then, of course, I said at the beginning, we want to look at unlabeled data, on how to detect interesting things that we don't know. No? And one of the approach that we follow in this case was to frame the problem as an out of distribution problem, that you are able to tell when you are looking at some data that this data is unknown to you. You have not seen this before. So essentially, we train a classifier with our supervised learning data set, and we are going to try to be able to tell when a new or a type of data that you have never seen during training, you are able to detect that this is an anomaly. No? There are different ways of doing this. We have tried during the years many different ways. In this case, we apply this approach that tries to look at how the output of the classifier looks like. So essentially, a neural network in particular, the output tries to express. People say that this is a probability, but I do not agree with this, but essentially give you an idea of how much the network thinks that it belongs to one class or the other. No? So normally, if the classification goes well, you see something like this in the logics of the final layer. But you have situations like this that actually the network is telling you, look, I don't know. It looks like everything. So you need to try to learn to detect these situations where the output of the network shows a characteristic that is not sure of what to do. So what we did here to try to improve this is to say, okay, I'm going to do 2 things. First, I'm going to, well, by the way, we tried to do this with the state-of-the-art approaches and all of that. It didn't work. It worked more or less. So what we propose is, okay, let's try to force the network to show this I don't know behavior in a more clear way. So the trick that we follow, and it was that, okay, we train in the normal supervised way with the SUSCAN data set, for example, for plankton. And then we pick another data set that we knew that we would not see in our problem, for example, flowers. We pick flowers because we assume that it looks natural, let's say. It's more or less natural looking. No, you know, it's not a horse. Well, actually, horse is like a car. but it still looks like, but not that you should not have flowers as plankton, no? And what, to give you a very simple idea, the idea was that every time we showed a flower, we wanted to see this flat zero activation. So the network would be like, I don't know, because I ain't seen this and I don't know. So it was really good. We bumped the performance of out of distribution detection from 58% to 93%. What we did here is that for the SUSCAN data set, we use a reduced amount of data just to not have the unbalanced problem also included. So we, in a balanced data set, we had 43 classes, if I remember correctly, and we repeated this 43 times, leaving one class out. So this is the average of all the classes that we remove and try to detect as an anomaly. So it actually worked really well. And right now, following the trends of modern ML, we are actually generating fake plankton images. Instead of using the plankton data set, we are using a small version of DALI that is able to generate images, asking DALI to generate an image that looks like a given plankton species. And we get these kind of things generated that looks, so it's even more confusing. And the level of out of distribution detection, the finer capacity is getting better. But this is still in process. We still don't have any results. So how can we apply this to the context we are working on? So for example, in the past, we applied very similar problems to try to detect changing state AGNs. I have to say that to me, this is really interesting because it's a fastest published paper I have had in my life. So it was like, once the paper was submitted, it was approved really fast. I was like, I love astronomy. And what we did here, by the way, just before we go into that, is also indirectly connected with the Rubin Observatory, because this is a collaboration with the University of Chile, and we wanted to see if it would be possible to detect this interesting astronomical objects using minimum supervision or not supervision. So we follow this anomaly detection approach. And sorry, I will check my slides later, but I am running out of time, so I will move a little bit faster. Here, in this case, we train an autoencoder with the light curves and apply some anomaly detection methods already existing, and we had very interesting results. Actually, at least I am super happy because we detected a bunch of black hole candidates that some of them right now have been confirmed. This work was done, the first author was Paula Sanchez, that she's now working at ESO. And she has already booked some time for, observation to verify this kind of thing. So being a computer scientist is, for me, and for us in general, is a very positive thing to be able to contribute by doing some meaningful stuff. And it's the same thing in the case of biology, that it's very interesting things happens in the combination of the two. This is not the only thing we are doing, applying this principle of trying to do self-learning and learning with minimal user intervention. This is another work we are doing, collaboration with the Universidad Diego Portales and Paula Joffre and the PhD student Theo. They have been doing in UDP this set of very interesting papers that they try to generate like a genealogy of stars in the Milky Way. So it's like you know this better than me, when a star disappears, the elements produced by this star goes to another star, and you can make like a family tree of the galaxy. And what we are doing, they did this on a smaller scale. What we did this is that we crunched all the numbers of all the stars or at least a substantial part on the Milky Way, and try to learn to map from a spectra to chemical composition to then try to rebuild these similarity trees and generate this like a sort of family tree inside the galaxy. So this is the work we have been doing in this area of self-learning and learning, representation learning, and all of that. Then there is a lot of work related that in these shared domains in the overlap between combining, let's say, human knowledge and in particular models with machine learning. And this is what we call, I'm going to jump here, sorry, what we call physics-informed machine learning. And in machine learning, it's funny because from the 3 years or 5 years from now, everywhere I go, I see some work related to this. And as a machine learning person, to me, this is really interesting because it's a way of closing the gap between human knowledge and data. No, so I immediately, personally, I jump at this, and I don't know if you are familiar, but essentially what we are doing here is training a neural network that is able to, let's say, consume data, but also is able to conform to a given existing model. So it has a lot of benefits. The network becomes explainable if you want, or you can use the different scenarios where data cover one part of the domain and the model covers another part of the domain and all of that. This is really important, for example, in the case of the ocean, because one of the things that we want to do is that, okay, I measured this thing, what happened, the ocean is moving, so the populations will be in another place. So we need to look at this. And again, and this is why it's interesting to address these complex applications, is that actually we had to take a step back and go to do some basic science. When we started to apply things to try to model these situations, we saw that it was not like, a straightforward problem. Essentially, because you have these two loss functions right now that in the simplest formulation, you try to compensate. It can be more complex, expressed in a more complex way, but essentially you have the loss of your data, the loss of your physics, and you need to decide what are you going to pay attention to what. But the problem is that this lambda is actually overloaded because these two loss functions have actually completely different numerical properties. So they start contradicting each other. The network does not learn, have an erratic performance and all of that. So we say, okay, let's stop here and let's have an approach at this that is a multi-objective approach. So it's true that we are trying to minimize the two loss functions at the same time, but we first need to understand what we expect to have. And then the other problem, and again, this is connected with our research interest, is that we saw that a lot of these approaches were doing like, this worked for me, so I published it like this. There was not an exploration of what is the optimal architecture for solving the problem and all of that. So we tried to come up with this solution and apply something that is called multi-objective optimization. We do multi-objective optimization all the time. When you buy a car, you try to buy the best car for the minimum price. And these are contradicting objectives. Of course, there are people that buy, I don't know, like Land Rovers that are bad cars, that are expensive. This is not in the Pareto optimal front. So we want to find trade-offs going from a Bentley to a Chevrolet, whatever, that is inexpensive and but bad. So we want to find this set of good trade-offs. In the middle, maybe you have, a Mercedes or a BMW, but so the idea here is that, okay, imagine that these are your loss functions where we need to be able to tell, okay, given this is the trade-off that you have, with what do you want to settle? Not doing it a priori when you don't know this. For this, we apply evolutionary multi-objective optimization. That is an old topic we have been working on. Essentially, it's an optimization approach inspired in the evolution of the species. It's a very well-established problem right now, and this is the problem that we try to solve. Our individuals try to represent different trade-offs between the loss of data and physics, and each individual that was a neural network was meant to solve the problem for that location, no? And we do that individual and also describe the neural network and try to find the best neural network to solve the problem. So it was a trade-off between loss, physics, and for that point, the best neural network possible. We apply this in different problems, and these are some of the solutions we have. This is a paper that we published last year. And you see, well, this is a representation that I discovered that mathematicians love. So this is the difference between the real or the real solution, and this is the what we got, and this is the difference. So it worked like really well. These are different steps of the optimization. This is another problem. Again, you see, in this case, it's not perfect. There are areas of the equation that it didn't work perfectly, but this is, again, more of the similar situation at different times. And then we applied this to another problem of the ocean that has to do with different coupled models. No? So imagine that you have water moving in the ocean, but then you have an ecosystem that is also governed by a partial differential equation that is, for example, these are called MPC models of nutrient, phytoplankton, zooplankton models. And we wanted to put this ecosystem moving in the ocean and then interacting with the different individuals. And we got something like this. I don't have time to describe all the things we do, but this is the fluid moving, and this is the nutrient concentration moving in this fluid as it is being eaten by the phytoplankton, and then this phytoplankton is eaten by the zooplankton. So this is also very preliminary research. Actually, it's not yet published, but shows that there is a lot of opportunities to work on this. And you will be asking, what are you doing related to astrophysics here? And well, actually, Theo, it's a PhD student co-directed by NIAD. He is doing his PhD on trying to apply these physics-informed models to model stellar atmospheres to be able to right now you have like a fixed mesh of this that you look up for the star properties and try to do it in an explicit way using a neural network. So it's a very interesting, I think, problem that we are solving. So thank you very much. I know I went super extra fast, but I wanted to dedicate some time for questions. Just to give you, this is like some of the work we are doing, and I hope this is like the beginning of a conversation. And this is important. And the message is that it is not that we work in climate change or astrophysics. Actually, we work in machine learning and apply this and try to generate this kernel knowledge that is shared by different domains. Some publicity, we have these scientific days in early December that I think you can attend online. If you want to come, it's also a good opportunity. Feel free to be invited. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Luis. Thank you so much. Yes. All right. So we will open floor to the questions. If you raise your hand on Slack, that's the best way. While we are waiting for that, I will use my host privilege, and we were showing the changing look AGN example, for instance, which I'm quite like. I'm particularly familiar with that Tachibana paper that you mentioned briefly as a predecessor of the works, which I'm also familiar to some extent. And I remember the problem there was, for instance, in that paper, they discovered that there are all these asymmetries in the light curves by machine learning. But what happens there, it's because the observations are limited. So you are more likely to see things brightening because when they go dimmer, they drop out of your observations. So what happened there, the machine learning learned the specificities of observations and actually occluded the actual physics. And because it was so complex, it's a black box. The conclusion is that the light curves are asymmetric, but they're not. It's like observational bias, which is common in astronomy. And I found that as a very good example why machine learning is difficult in astronomy. And I don't know if you just have any thoughts about how to overcome such issues, which maybe astronomy has particular difficult issues there, or maybe other fields as well. A little bit this problem. Yeah. There are no horse, it's not horses. It has these complexities.
Yeah, no, I totally, I agree with you. And You know, in mathematics and machine learning, we have this no free lunch theorem, no?
Right,
That
right,
there is no way there is one tool that is going to be solving all the problems, no? Essentially, no? So this thing that sometimes it is like an oversimplification. So I will, apply scikit-learn. By the way,
right.
advertisement, scikit-learn is made by Inria. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. I'm going to apply scikit-learn on this, and like how to say, I call this the sausage factory, no? And you have to open the box. You need to
Right.
understand what you're doing, no? This is the first thing. You need to look at the data. You need to spend some exploratory, analysis and all of that. And for that, it cannot be a machine learning guy in the sense that you need to
Right.
see understand what you're. In my experience doing this, every successful project that I have finished with me learning about the problem at the point that maybe even machine learning is not only needed, no? Because I need to understand what I am seeing. It's not, this is not cats. No, I need to look at plankton or images. Then going to your question, I think that I believe that using these physics informed principles, I know, for example, there are these, and this is what Theo is doing in part. I can put you in contact. I know he just wrote the proposal, and I read it, his thesis proposal, and has a description of this. That you can make this representation to be consistent with physics, no? And so it's not the problem of, I would say, the difficulty of machine learning is that it learns too much. So essentially, it gets and it goes to the details. If you feed the algorithm too many details, it's going to go for the details. It's overfitting. So a lot of effort in machine learning is actually to how to make sure that your model does not learn so well that it overfits to your data. No, that I think is what
Right.
you're referring to. One of the way of preventing this overfit is, for example, adding this physics information that then makes make you force your network to comply with some physics law that you need to most that most exhibit your phenomenon at all times. And then, of course, you need, I don't know, to take some other measures on how you train your model to ensure that it, for example, to try to find the minimum size of neural network that solves your problem. The smaller the neural network you can get, the less it's going to learn, more or less. This is not, this is machine learning, not an exact science.
Right.
But in theory, the smaller the network, it should be less capable. So if you wanted to generalize the best possible, you should do this exploration, no? So this is where there are things that you can do, let's say at the level more about data analysis, or let's say experimental analysis. It's like these ablation studies that you progressively make on a smaller network to see how the performance degrade, and you will see there if there is how is overfitting happening and this kind of thing. And then personally, if I would do like a more sciencey thing, I would go for a physics informed approach, because I think it's, right now the tools are ready. This is not yet official, but we are making a library for helping people, code these sort of models and all of that. And I don't know.
Okay.
This is my intuition here.
All right, let's go. Let's go back. Let's go to the rec room so we get a few more questions. And
yeah, I wanted to thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask you about the image-based anomaly detection that you were talking about, and the out-of-domain adversarial kind of combination network that you had built. There are a couple of questions about that. So in working with these kinds of images, in terms of even all the dimensionality reduction and clustering and these kinds of tools that are available for anomaly detection, in terms of working with those specific images, did you find that some of these methods were working better than others? And do you have a general intuition for which class of anomaly detection algorithms were working better for your specific problem and why?
Bueno, so yes, so I presented three set of let's say three experiments. Let's say one experiment is like the fully supervised approach, no clustering or anything, just trying to learn this, let's call it brute force, no? Pose this as a because it's important, as my professor told me, you need to be connecting to the question of Neven before, you need to be able to overfit at least, no? And then to fit, no? And this is more or less, at least you need to be able to classify stuff. If you don't get to classify them properly, the problem is even more complicated. So that is why we took this first step. Here, we have results that are consistent with, let's say, the state of the art, these image classification transformers and swing transformer and this kind of thing, no? I think that the best model was the DEIT. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it in English, no? And another thing that we did, and I am not showing these results here, is that we train on one plankton data set and evaluating how good we were on classifying the other data set and how good we were on transferring knowledge from one data set to another. Because one parenthesis, one of the problems that we have is that it is not only plankton images, but even in the same expedition, you can guess they have different cameras because, time passes and they change the equipment and they have better cameras, or so it is not even consistent in the same data set. This is different. Then I think then we have this hierarchical problem that we applied, and there is one of the methods, I forgot the name, that came out the best. Actually, the results are more or less similar. The most meaningful result is that going hierarchical gave a lot of big performance improvement, and intuitively it makes sense because you are looking at the problem saying, okay, I'm going to classify this data. First, I want to see if, in this case, if it is alive or dead. If it is living, it is a prokaryote or eukaryote. So every classification becomes simpler and simpler. So intuitively, and this is a result that I think can be extrapolated to many other domains. For example, probably in the case of astronomy, you also have like this topology of objects that you can split the classification into and then boost the performance. And then the final part, what we did was this out of distribution detection, and the best approach was actually an ensemble of the different approaches that we applied. I think I have them listed here in the slide. Sorry, I will go really fast. These are the different approaches that we follow: energy-based, Mahalanobis distance-based, and grand matrix-based. And on top of them, we run a hypothesis test, and that is like this ensemble. And when all agreed that this was an anomaly, then this was an anomaly, an out of distribution instance, and therefore an unknown plankton. This is really, by the way, this is really relevant because if you are processing a lot of plankton images and you want to have a biologist to help you, for example, label data, you would only need to ask help for out of distribution data. So data that the classifier does not know already. And in that sense, is one of the intentions of doing this.
Okay, Luis, let's get one more question. So CMU, please.
Hi, thank you so much for talk. It's fantastic overview of huge amount of works. If I could, highlight the only thing you said in your talk. So if I could take the only thing, I really loved the thing that you said that ML is not is only a part of the pipeline, right? It's only part of the problem to maximize some or minimize some loss or maximize some F1 score or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So taking this into account, I have a question about anomaly detection. So I remember in Paula's paper, when you examined out of distribution objects you found that a lot of them are just photometric artifacts of ZTF. We found the same in SNET team analyzing ZTF data, and I'm pretty sure that with all real scientific data, you will have these kind of problems. So it's not enough to find out of distribution objects. Yes, we need to find interesting out of distribution objects, sorry. So in SNET, we try to solve this problem with reinforcement learning, with expert in loop. And what do you think about it? So what is the right, good way of selecting, true anomalies or interesting out of distribution objects from what algorithm?
So it is, so thank you for the question. You made a very good question and also gave a very good reply. So what I was about to say thinking as you were posing the question is, yes, there are different names for the same, let's say, the same general approach, this reinforcement learning with human in the loop, or active learning, whatever you want to call it. How you do it, it can be different, but again, this is not a single shot system in the sense that you do something once and that's it. Actually, it's an interactive problem. As every scientific problem, you have different elements of the solution. Maybe the first pass is, okay, I will do an out of distribution detection to filter out things I already know and help, reduce the cognitive burden for the next step. But that's not the end. Data is full of, all data sets are full of noise, no? In plankton, for example, a lot of images are like half a plankton, because they don't pose for the photo or one leg, no? So a lot of these out of distribution are actually part of something else, no? For example, no? Or just a bubble or a little, issue in the camera, no? But this is like the first step, no? And the way we saw this in the case of plankton, for example, is okay. Now we need to sit with somebody that knows, let's say a marine biologist, and tell those more or less what we are doing and what do we want to do next, no? In the case of plankton in particular, we have this contact with Ecotaxa that, as I told you, if you want to go and play, it's free for everybody. You can enter and see, and it helps people tag images. So we could be working with them and say, okay, instead of having to tag 1 million images of your data set, let's do some, for example, active learning when I show you some of the prototypical different plankton images and tell me if they are actually different species, and an interactive tool. And here Nayad is a very good expert on how to combine AI and human-computer interaction in a productive way. And by the way, I think this is, in all of these cases, this is the way, no? Then in the other case of, let's say in the astronomical part, again, I am going to give the same answer. I think that there is a very good opportunity by applying these physics-informed principles that is a way of being able to check if your model is meeting the parameters of the let's say of the physical phenomena that you are actually observing. This is the word. But again, I think that you are following what in my intuition is the right way to go. That is just to involve a human, but minimizing the burden of just going over the whole data, but just providing eventually, as a computer scientist, machine learning guy for many years now, because I started really early, not because I am old. I can tell you it's generally, it implies a lot of modules. It's never like a single one pipeline and one thing, and done. It's actually, you need to, maybe this becomes like a annotation tool to make a better data set and all of that. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Luis. We are over our time. So thank you once again. And for everyone else, we will join us again December 7th, which is not second Thursday of the month. It's the first Thursday of the month when we will hear for the results of the first set of incubators. Thank you once again, Luis. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Bye.
Thank you.